Not every narcissist looks like a villain. Some of them look like a savior. They don't start with rage, they start with charm. They don't scream, they sigh. They don't demand, but they quietly manipulate. That is the covert narcissist, the abuser you do not see coming. Sometimes it's easier to spot the monster who yells than the one who whispers. The covert narcissist hides behind sensitivity, empathy, and victimhood. They do not blow up the room, but they do bleed you out slowly. And that is why they are almost more dangerous than the overt ones, because you can see them coming a mile away. I'm Megan Webster, an abuse recovery coach, trauma-informed strategist, and the woman narcissist hopes to never meet twice. This is the Narcissist's Worst Nightmare podcast, where we strip off the mask of abuse, break the trauma bond that keeps you stuck, build exit plans, nervous system safety, and self-trust you need to reinvent, rebuild, and redeem your life. Let's talk about the mask of sensitivity. The covert narcissist does not hook you with arrogance. They hook you with their softness. They lead with a wounded origin story. Every woman has cheated on me. My ex was abusive. Here's the history. No one's ever understood me like you. It lands like intimacy. It feels like trust. But it's a pity contract. They hand you their pain and wait to see if you can carry it. They mirror you, your music, your politics, your beliefs, your boundaries, your therapy language, and you think, finally, somebody who gets it. They're not getting it. They are mapping it so they can weaponize it against you. They escalate fast, but with gentleness. Long late-night calls, trauma dumping framed as connection. Day 2 exclusivity to protect our energy. It feels safe because it's quiet. It is not safe. It is fast-tracked enmeshment. A client shared with me on their second date, he cried at the dinner table, and she thought it was showing that he was vulnerable and this was safe. 6 months later, that story became a weapon. After everything I've told you about my past, you're going to bring this up? That is not vulnerability. That is leverage. I dated a covert narcissist for 6 months. We spoke for hours on the phone every day. It disrupted my schedule, but we were long distance and I wanted to make it work. We would talk hours past my bedtime. It impacted my morning routine. And even when I was sick, instead of thinking that I wanted to rest, they would still ask to see me. At the time, I thought it was because he cared, but really, it was a form of control. They did not care that I was sick, just that they got the attention and time. I did not see this then, but I was abandoning myself for everything that they would ask. Here's what to clock early. The speed, the sad boy contract, the over-agreement with your values, and the subtle pressure for you to pick them now so you don't see the real them later. This is why we rebuild self-trust in the RRR membership, so your empathy stops being a leash and starts becoming a line they cannot cross. Overt narcissists yell. Covert narcissists calibrate. They punish you with absence, a quiet withdrawal after you name a need. They don't fight you, they air vacuum you. You feel crazy for minding it because there's nothing wrong at that point. But that's the whole thing. It's plausible deniability. They don't say things like, you're wrong, you're stupid. They will say, I never said that. You're reading into it. I'm feeling overwhelmed. It's micro-gaslighting. So you start to edit yourself to avoid the sigh, the sulk, the sermon on how sensitive you are. They triangulate with goodness. Their friends don't know what you're talking about. He's the nicest guy. Your therapist gets weaponized via misquotes. They'll talk about books and posts to reframe your reality. Virtue as a smokescreen. They perform repair without changing anything. A soft apology, a long text about transparency, accountability, a good week of behavior. But then the pattern reappears. That is intermittent reinforcement, the slot machine that keeps getting you to pull the lever. I had a client share with me that every time she stood up for herself, she would get flowers and long texts about how much he valued me and a week of good behavior. But then it would happen again, the silence. And she thought they were repairing, but they weren't. She was being reset. What this does to you is you will stop bringing things up to keep the peace. Your world shrinks around their comfort. The shrinkage is not compromise. It is control. Immediate protection moves sound like this. Stop over-explaining. Stop soothing the silence. Stop confusing performance for change. Treat the sulking as data, not a directive. Your job is not to manage an adult out of accountability. A lot of clients have shared with me that it feels harder to leave a covert narcissist versus an overt narcissist, because you don't leave a covert narcissist because you're finally mad enough. You leave when you are finally clear enough. And here's why you stay longer. There's cognitive dissonance. The covert narcissist is essentially two men living in one body. The sweet version who cried in your arms and the cold version who cuts you with silence. And your brain will cling to the sweeter one because that is safer to believe. If you let yourself see the cruelty clearly, you will have to admit this whole thing is a lie, and that feels too big to hold. The public halo. To the outside world, he's a saint. He's the guy who remembers birthdays, the one who posts about mental health awareness, the one your friends call a great guy. And you start to feel insane trying to explain what happens behind closed doors, because if nobody sees it, maybe you are really the problem. The intermittent relief. Just when you're about to leave, he resurrects the man you first met. He's attentive. He's affectionate. He's listening. He's texting good morning. And that resets your nervous system like a drug hit. You've forgotten the weeks, months of withdrawal because your body is starved for crumbs. Self-blame. Because there's no bruises, no screaming matches, no objects being thrown, nothing dramatic to point at, you decide the harm must be you. You're too sensitive, too demanding, too emotional, and you start rewriting reality to protect him. That's why covert abuse lasts longer. It convinces you to hold the knife and still believe you're the one bleeding by accident. Here's the savage truth. Abuse is about control, not volume. If you have to get smaller to keep the peace, you are not in peace. You're in a program. 3 months into that relationship I spoke about earlier with the covert narcissist, I can remember spending an entire weekend upset from an argument that we had about how I felt. This feels so ridiculous to say out loud. He had asked me why I was upset, how I felt, and what I had shared with him was I felt rejected. He had a very big reaction to it and then proceeded to ignore me for 2 days with minimal texting. I talked to a friend about it and she was like, Meg, I think it's just a fight. I don't think it's that bad. But I knew this was silence as punishment for sharing how I felt because he did not agree with it. When we finally spoke, he did not apologize. He stated that my ex must have done some serious damage and he is sorry about that situation. I should have left then, but I was in a place in my life where I still valued that connection and that person more than myself. 3 months later, he did the exact same thing, and I walked away, no contact, for good. This is exactly why I built Forged in the Fire, how to turn your scars into sovereignty, because you can't logic your way out of covert abuse. You need fire that burns the fog, the excuses, and the blueprint that made you think silence was safety. On October 23rd, we are going to go there. Free, live, and raw. You can't negotiate with covert control. You outstructure it. That means you stop treating his behavior as random and start treating it as predictable. Withdrawal after boundary, data. Apology without change, data. The I'm overwhelmed, I'm tired, I'm something excuse every time you ask for accountability, data. Once you name it as data, you build your exits. I had a client tell me the day she stopped waiting for him to prove it was abuse and started just acting like it was, because it is, everything shifted for her. She stopped debating and she started planning. This is what a real exit looks like. It's not drama, it's not yelling, planning, strategy, boundaries, structure with consequences you will actually enforce. Nervous system anchoring is going to be really important here too. Cold water on the wrists, flat feet on the floor, long exhales, orienting the room, telling yourself that you are safe and this is not yours to fix. This is my boundary. This is what I want for you in Forged in the Fire, because planning doesn't just happen in theory. It happens in the room when you finally say enough. where we burn the fantasy that covert tactics are love. And you get to see with brutal clarity what you're actually up against and how you finally end it. The overt narcissist burns you fast. The covert narcissist bleeds you slow. One leaves bruises on your life. The other leaves fingerprints on your mind. Both are abuse. Both are theft. But the covert one steals what's hardest to get back, and that is your self-belief. Name the pattern. Run the protocol. Rebuild your self-trust. You do not need permission from anybody or anything to leave a quiet war. You need a plan. That plan is inside of Reinvent, Rebuild, and Redeem membership. And your ignition point is Forged in the Fire, How to Turn Your Scars into Sovereignty on October 23rd. It is a free event, one night to burn it all down and rise into the woman you are meant to be. If this episode cracks something open in you good, that means you are waking up. Please share this with another woman who needs to hear it. Hit follow so you never miss the next one. And send me a DM on Instagram and tell me what landed for you. And I know you're ready to go deeper. Join me inside the Reinvent, Rebuild, and Redeem membership in a community of women where they set themselves free from abuse and build a life that they love. This is the Narcissist Worst Nightmare podcast. And remember, your comeback starts the second you decide you are done apologizing for things that were never your fault.